Back in the early 1800s, the only fuels that people had for heating and cooking were wood, coal, and whale oil. But that all changed, though, in 1859, when E.L. Drake of Titusville, Pennsylvania, set up the first commercial oil well. His idea was a gusher, and today, oil is the #1 resource used in the world. Oil. What a concept. When people first started shipping oil, spills were commonplace and were thought to be more of a nuisance than an environmental problem. Rachel Carson, a biologist and a pioneer in the field of ecology, challenged those ideas. With her books, The Edge of the Sea and The Silent Spring, she alerted the world to the dangers of industrial pollution. And while some didn't agree with her opinions, the fact remains that she changed the way that we looked at our environment. Environmental protection. Now there's a serious concept.
Are you sure your dad won't mind if we borrow it?
Don't worry, he's cool about things like this. Besides, what's going to happen to it?
Come on, we're going to be late. Just... Great. Now look what you did.
Well, don't just stand there and look at it. Get someone to clean it up.
There's no rag. It's not working too well. Here, let me try this. This doesn't work either. Olivia, what should we use?
I don't know. I'm not the scientist. My dad is.
Well, we've got to do something. Maybe if we get some water.
Hi, girls. Having a problem?
Dr. Dad!
Dad, see, we wanted the chicken and the oil spilled and it got all over the place, and we're trying to clean up, and we're really sorry.
Relax. We'll just have to put some cat litter on it, and that will take care of the whole thing.
Cat litter?
Yep.
On an oil spill? That's weird. Why not use water or something?
Well, cat litter's made out of mostly clay, and it really absorbs or soaks up the oil pretty well. And water, if we just put water on it, it would just spread out and make it even more of a mess. Olivia, could you get me the brush and the pan over there?
Is that why oil spills in an ocean are so hard to clean up?
Well, that and the fact on an ocean you're sort of floating up and down and bouncing. It makes things a lot more difficult.
But, Dad, they don't use cat litter in the oceans, do they?
Well, not exactly. That would be kind of inconvenient. But I'll tell you, since we're going to have to wait a couple of minutes for this thing to sort of absorb, and now you have some time on your hands, why don't we try a little experiment here? We can make a little mini oil spill if you want. Natalie, why don't you go get the baking dish from up on top there? And Karen, some water. And you, my dear oil spill expert, why don't you get me the gallon of oil, cooking oil over there? And we'll see how this thing works out. Go ahead, fill it up. We're going to make the Atlantic Ocean in there, so put a lot of water in there. And Olivia, why don't you fill this up about half a cup of oil? All right. Now, all right, that looks good, Karen. Now, what I want you to do is pour it into the middle real slowly and watch what happens to the oil when you do. All right, what do you see?
Well, the oil is floating.
Okay, and what else?
Yeah, but it's spreading faster.
We need something to hold it together, like some string or something.
Okay, well, it sounds like you girls are on the right track, so why don't I give you about a minute or so, and I'll let you engineer your oil spill cleanup. All right? On your mark, get set, go.
Get some cups, y'all.
Oh, y'all, get a cup. Yeah, let's see here.
Okay.
Help. Get something right. Come on, faster.
30 seconds.
Time's up. Ew, nice job. Well, how'd you do with the water in the bowl?
Well, I think we got most of the oil, but we were left with a cup of slimy water.
Okay.
I
Go ahead.
don't see any more oil in there.
Well, There's a little bit, but I'll tell you what, Karen, why don't you put your hand in there and tell me what you feel.
Do I have to?
Yeah, well, you're the scientist, so give it a try.
Gross. It's still all slimy.
Here, wipe your hands on this. You see, you got most of the oil up, and they actually did a pretty good job because what you were doing was skimming it off the surface, and that's what they do with real oil spills. But the problem is, what happens is as you work it, the oil gets little bubbles in the water, and that's what you're feeling in there. It's the oil bubbles. And that you can't see. It's the oil you can't see is the problem. So what they're doing over at LSU is they're developing these microbes, sort of like bacteria, that actually eat the oil that you can't see in an oil spill. Hi, Kamiko, what are you doing in here?
I try to isolate microorganisms.
So you mean on that plate you have a whole bunch of different kinds of microbes?
Yes, start up with whole bunch.
Now, what is it that you do here? What's your job?
I'm a curator of microorganisms we have in here.
A curator? That sounds like you run a zoo or something.
That's right.
So you're in charge of the Microbial Zoo?
Yes.
Now, after you isolate the organisms on these plates, where do they go?
We try to biolog, which is to identify what kind of organism we have.
Right.
Then I keep some in a freezer and some in a slant.
Wait, you freeze them?
Yes.
Doesn't that hurt them at all?
Oh, no.
Now, how cold does it get in here?
It's minus 75 degrees.
And that's Celsius?
Yes.
That's pretty cold. Now, each one of these eats something different?
Yes. They all group together, eat different stuff. Okay. They degrade creosote.
So everything in here eats creosote.
Right.
So you'd use this on a creosote leak.
Yes.
That's very cool. In fact, it's cold. Why don't we close it back up? I'm getting frostbite.
Okay.
Hi, Marty. What are you doing?
I'm making media for my anaerobes.
Making media for your anaerobes. Okay, I know an anaerobe is something that doesn't live with oxygen.
Correct.
And a media is what?
Media is what they need to eat and grow.
So there's living things in there, basically.
Not yet. As soon as I put the salt in here, then it'll be ready for these things to go in. My microbes will go from this bottle into this bottle, and they'll have a new place to live.
So you're making little microbe homes.
Correct.
Okay, so what is a microbe?
Well, microbe is very, very small. It can be a plant, animal, fungi. Most of the time when people say microbe, they're talking about bacteria.
Okay, we're talking about microbes. We said they're really small. Well, how small are they? Let's say this pencil eraser is a microbe. Now, that's supposed to be a half micron in size. In order for this to match a drop of water, the drop of water would have to be the size of Tiger Stadium. Microbes are small. Really, really small.
Bacteria that eats all? That's weird.
Weird, but effective. You know, oil spills in the ocean are a pain, but you have room to work in the ocean. You can get in amongst the molecules of water. But in soil, it's really hard when you have an oil spill on the land.
Why is that?
Well, when the oil seeps in, it kind of coats the particles. And, well, I can show you. And Natalie, why don't you, I have some soil back there. Why don't we use some of it? And Karen, you're going to be our oil spill expert this time, all right? So take the oil. And we're going to pack some dirt in here. So we'll just put it in the bowl. Just grab a big clump of that. That's good. Drop it in there and pack some of this stuff and break it up a little bit. Okay. Now, watch what happens when we pour some of the oil in there. You get that back in there. Okay, Karen, just pour it in nice and slowly. Coat the top. What do you see?
Check it out. The oil is
That's
seeping
good.
right into the dirt.
Look, it's coating the grains.
Yeah, you see what happens with soil is the oil gets in there and gets in between each one of the particles and forms this thin film. And because you can't get in there to scrape it off, it's almost impossible to get out. And this is where the bacteria are really cool because they can get in there and they can work their ways down in these little tiny spaces. These microbes are really small. They can just eat away at all that oil. So in a couple of years, they can actually clean up a real bad spill.
This is the impounded area itself, the soil mixture with the solvents and the contaminants in place. And over my shoulder here is the bioreactor where we're actually introducing the microorganisms into this soil matrix, into this subsurface environment to biodegrade the contamination in place.
Now, how do you get the microbes into the soil? Do they go in through the water, or?
No, we actually go in and cut a slit in the bottom of this impoundment, or this little lake here, and we slide a small bioreactor in place and close it back up. And so we have microorganisms, and the word we use is in situ, or in place. And the bioreactor to the back of us inoculates the bioreactor that's underneath the ground here, and we start cleaning up the soil.
So this is the stuff that we're talking about?
Right. This is what we call in the lab our bug condominium.
Okay.
And it actually is slid right into the impounded area itself. And inside these open spaces are the beads, as you have here in your hand.
So this is really where they're living on.
Right. And each one of these beads has about 10 to 15 billion microorganisms in each bead. And they're inside this plate and operating underneath the impoundment here, as you see it. We're pulling samples below surface to monitor how quickly the subsurface microorganisms are actually attacking and degrading, or eating, if you will, the chemicals in question in the soil.
Up in the back here, then, you have the microbes stored, and they're just being pumped in.
Right. At this stage in the game, this bioreactor to the back of us has the same kinds of surfaces as we have below the ground, and in a couple of weeks the activity in the subsurface reactor will be at such a high level that we can actually disconnect the surface reactor. This reactor will run underground for 20 or 30 years.
Wow, that's amazing. And it's all done just with the microbes?
Just with the microbes.
Fantastic. Well, you know, girls, we learned a lot about oil spills, cleaning them up. I think it's about time we clean some of this mess up around here. Yeah. So, Karen, could you get rid of that bowl of dirt for me? And here, if you want to take this off to the side, Natalie, we got to filter that water out later. And Olivia, take that, and I'll just sweep up the old cat litter here. It seems to have done the trick on the big spill.
Are there any other problems with oil spilling in an ocean?
Well, yeah, you know, oceans are problems because only getting the water and oil separated, that's the first step. Then you got all sorts of problems with the animals that live in there. The oil gets into the food chain, the little plankton that gets it, and then they have to eat it and they get sick. Mammals like otters, sea otters, and seals get it in the fur, and birds get it in their feathers. And it's a real tough job cleaning them up and protecting them. In fact, I should show you what it's a little bit like. I have some fake fur here, and I've never seen a pink seal before, but you can imagine what it's like, you know, if you had this kind of fur. Now, let me put a little bit of this leftover oil on here. And how would you go about cleaning up, let's say this was a seal, how would you go about cleaning up some of that fur? What do you think?
Well, I guess we could use soap and water.
Okay, what do you think?
Yeah, maybe lots of towels.
A lot of towels. And...
I'll get a hairdryer.
Okay, go ahead. All right, and while you're working on that, ladies, I'll tell you what. Why don't you also see how good you are at cleaning up chickens?
Chickens?
Yes. Chickens?
Oops, sorry, Dad. We'll get right on it.
Okay. I'll see you guys later. Have a good time.
Okay.
Now that he's gone, I've got a challenge for you. See if you can come up with an effective way of separating oil and water. Get a big bowl filled with water, and instead of motor oil, use cooking oil. It's a lot safer. Start by mixing the oil in, and then try getting them apart. Remember, you want to get all the oil, and not just the stuff you can see. If you come up with any ideas, let us know.